A curious Instagram question posed by the user KJO for real brought about an interesting point of thought for me. It was a relatively simple question. Which game's pro scene has the biggest gap of skill or dominance between its number one player with the rest of the field? Now, KJO listed a bunch of players that quite frankly come from scenes that I'm not all that familiar with. Mostly from Supercell competitives like Side Tempo for Brawl Stars and Mo Light for Clash Royale. He then went to TENS for Valorant, which is quite a weird option since 1. He's not even a pro anymore, and you can argue that he wasn't all that dominant considering the fact that he won his first VCT Masters in 2021 and then didn't do much winning until 2024 came around before retiring at the end of said season. If we're thinking of one event dominance, then yes, TENS and Masters Reykjavik 2021 was a demon that curb-stomped on Valorant's best. But over the history of Valorant, I think people would have more choices other than the Sentinels man himself. Now, the interesting part actually came from the beginning of the video, where KJO gave an honorable mention to longtime chess dominator and world number 1, Magnus Carlsen. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the world of chess and the Magnus, let me just give you a brief summary. He's chess's undisputed world number 1 and has held set ranking since July of 2011, making his reign the current longest held world number 1 position under the FIDE, or the International Chess Federation rankings, spanning over 14 years. He's won 18 World Championship titles and also holds the record for the highest ELO rating ever recorded in chess history at 2882. Pretty good resume, even at a glance, right? The next part that made this question interesting was when KJO's comment section rightfully brought up one of the first people that plenty of others would associate with esports or game dominance. And that was, of course, the unkillable Demon King, Faker. Anyone who's followed esports would have at least heard of this baby-faced Anos Voldigod, 5 times League Worlds winner who is poised to win his 6th one as of the writing of this video, the only one to have won it more than 3 times, the youngest and oldest player to win it, 2 MSIs, a long list of LCK wins, and a reign of dominance that spanned all the way back from 2013. KJO's follow-up reel on Faker just further cements what the general gaming community has to say when it comes to a player that has a dominance that placed them way above the leagues of their contemporaries. Faker is known far and wide amongst the gaming community, and it is really no surprise to me that people were able to set aside KJO's other candidates and put the man Faker on top. But for me, it just gave me a rather interesting question that I honestly have never thought of asking as both a general esports follower and a longtime chess scene follower. Compared to esports and game legends of Faker's caliber, how does Magnus Carlsen's dominance hold up? If anything, I'm just surprised that KJO even brought Magnus up in his reel, because trying to understand the competitive chess scene from an outsider's perspective and to actually discern who's good, great, and dominant is quite a lot more confusing in comparison to a lot of the other game pro scenes out there. Because let's drag him into comparison with the 2 mentioned in KJO's community. Mo Light for Clash Royale, since I actually know or at least knew the game, Faker for the general community's vote, and then pit them next to Magnus Carlsen. Mo Light's dominance is the easiest to explain. Clash Royale's competitive scene, called the Clash Royale League, actually began in 2018, but that was when it was team-based. 2021 was the year we saw 1v1 Clash Royale became the name of the game, which honestly, as someone who used to play the game but hasn't touched it in literal years, shouldn't 1v1 be the competitive scene to begin with? In any case, the CRL's main big boy title is the CRL World Champion title, which you can get once you win the CRL World Finals. Same thing with how Worlds is for League. Since 2021, Mo Light have reached 4 out of 5 finals and have won 3 of them, which may not sound all too dominant, but I would say that the fashion in which he won them also contributes to just how his dominance has been perceived. In any of the World Final matches he won, he always whitewashed said matches. 2-0 in both 2022 and 2024, and even 3-0 when they changed the final match to a best-of-5 format in 2025. That's about all I can say about Mo Light. I don't follow the scene, nor can I actually tell if any of the clashes that he plays are super dominating level, but he was nominated in that discussion in that regard, so that's that. Let's move on to Faker. Looking at it from the general view of the esports community, I'm really not surprised that people would immediately say that Faker had the more dominating career, especially in our kind of test case here. His 5 or maybe 6 worlds, depending on how Sunday goes, easily clears him away from his competitors, and for obvious notes, the only guy who has 3 worlds titles, which is the most a player have won after Faker, was Faker's long-standing jungler Bengi in his 2013, 2015, and 2016 wins. Even a lot of the players who have won 2 worlds were also Faker's teammates. The X factor is quite plausible, and seeing as no other league player has come close to even achieving the world's records that he has, it is an extremely obvious case of how people will rightfully give him that most dominant title. He also has 2 MSI titles under his name, which to say isn't the most an individual league player has won. That title belongs to RNG legends Xiaohu and Ming, who each has 3. However, Faker is part of the only team who have held the world's title and the MSI title in the same year, doing it with SK Telecom in 2016. Again, explaining his dominance is very straightforward, and it's also due to how straightforward establishing dominance in League's competitive scene actually is. Your worlds win, your MSI wins, and your domestic league performance, most of which Faker either tops or has exclusive accolades to. In contrast, to understand the magnitude of Magnus Carlsen's dominance, people would need a whole lot more context and a bit more of an explanation to grasp just how dominant Magnus is and just how long, brutally, and consistently he had enacted his stamp across the world of chess. It also might just be that bit more of a headache to understand for people who don't know chess at all. Chess is a wholly different game compared to the other 2 fully esport titles, especially since computer study and analysis completely changed the way players view the game from the 90s and the 2000s, and to how it is now. You have a competition where players are essentially locked into a battle of theory, technique, position, speed, and mentality, sometimes all of them mixed together at a given moment in a match. Chess players often have to think 4, 5, 10, or maybe even 20 moves ahead just to gain a smidge of an advantage against their opponent. Or in other cases, they think 20 moves ahead only to realize that they are gonna draw the game, or more depressingly, gonna lose the game. Above it all, the best of the chess grandmasters do it wicked fast. Here's Magnus Carlsen himself calculating a line in the middle of his own game without looking at the board, and quite honestly, without even looking like he's even thinking all that much.
I was also looking at the move h5, bishop f3, queen takes f3, queen takes f3, g takes f3, and then bishop takes e2, queen takes e2, knight takes e2, rook d1, knight takes g1, rook takes d4, and that doesn't work because there's checkmate in the end.
And imagine this, the 2 people laughing at him for going so quickly were Peter Lecko, who was a former world number 4, and next to him is Judith Polgar, regarded as one of, if not the greatest female chess player of all time, and even they can barely keep up. And beyond the game's own complexion, its competitive scene also takes quite a bit to understand. Under the long-time watchful eyes of FIDE, chess's main accolade is the World Chess Champion title. However, ever since 2012, this title had 3 branches. You have the default, which is the World Classical Champion, then you have World Rapid Champion, and World Blitz Champion, which all coincides with the 3 main time controls that major chess tournaments usually utilize. Classical is the long and ostensibly for a lot of non-chess viewers, the boring one, where players usually start with an hour and a half in their clocks and one game can last for hours, while the World Championship match itself have at one point in history lasted for literal months. But Classical is also the most historically prestigious one, having been the longest one around, boasting the biggest prize and title distinction. Every 2 years, the champion would have to defend their title against a challenger that would have to win the candidates tournament held before the defense match, a tournament which usually fields the 8 strongest players in the world, bar the world champion himself, in a double round-robin system. Unlike the Classical World Championship, the World Rapid and Blitz are held every year, and these 2 are the shorter time control modes, which regular people would probably usually play, with World Rapid format starting at 15 minutes for each player, while Blitz comes in at just 3 minutes. To say the least, while yes, they are still playing chess in these 3 different formats, the difference in how you play chess within those time controls sometimes make you feel as if you're playing a completely different game. Classical chess tests just how far you are on theory, how deeply you can calculate all the possibilities, whilst also testing how long of a chess game you can endure before either your mind breaks or your opponent's mind breaks. Rapid is the middle ground. You have some time to think, but you also have to be quickly critical so that you don't use up too much time and remain clinical with your play when time does become a problem. Blitz, on the other hand, is usually pure chaos. You blitz out lines that you know 20 to 30 moves of its theory within maybe about a minute before it becomes a test of hand-eye coordination, brain reflexes, and your ability to maintain composure and thought when you literally only have 5 or less seconds to make a move. Apart from major tournament titles, there is one other medium to measure and pay attention to when it comes to ascertaining a player's overall skill level, which is their ELO rating. Think of it like the tennis leaderboards, but instead of defending the points that you get by re-winning a tournament, you defend and gain your points by winning matches in your respective time formats. Yes, there are also 3 separate rankings based on those 3 formats that I mentioned before. I'd say it's gonna be a headache. In my eyes, to understand chess domination, especially in the new gen era of chess, we need to establish this baseline of how chess's 3 major time controls make the chess competitive scene not that straightforward to follow, while also establishing the importance of looking at the underlying consistency of a player with their ELO performance. Because once we establish that, then we can talk about Magnus, and then we can talk about his dominance. Let's talk about his world champion titles. First, for classical, he has won 5 titles, which is the joint 3rd most in chess history, putting him behind Emanuel Lasker and Garry Kasparov, who both have 6. And usually, when a chess player refers to themselves or others as the world champion, that means that said person currently holds the classical world champion title. Now, the first discrepancy in the comparison of Magnus' status with competitors like Faker and Mo Light is that he is not the current world chess champion. It's actually this dude, Gukesh Domoraju. So, you can rightfully ask, was Magnus actually that dominant? He lost his world champion title, so what's the deal there? Well, unlike Faker, who did not hold a single world's title from 2017 to 2022 since everything around him was crap, Magnus had a bit more of a unique story. Picture this, you just won the Classical World Championship 5 times in a row, 2013, 2014, 2016, 2018, and 2021. And you beat the last guy very convincingly in WCC standards, not even needing the 14 allocated classical games for the match, and winning it in 11 without dropping a single game. You're about to hold the world champion title for 10 years since the next match was going to be in 2023. So you say to the organizers, hey, FIDE, can we change the format up a bit? It's starting to get a bit boring and, quite honestly, potentially playing 14 games for 3 to 5 hours on average only to get draws probably wouldn't be something that would entice current regular people outside of chess to then have interest in chess. FIDE said no. So Magnus, who quite literally didn't care anymore, just said, alright then, I'm gonna let go of my world champion title and let the top 2 of the 2022 candidates tournament play for it instead. Which was quite funny because the dude who won candidates was this guy, who I'm just gonna call Nepo because his last name's not something I would ever wanna type or say for the rest of this video, and he was the guy Magnus beat in 2021. But since Magnus withdrew, the candidates runner-up Ding Liren got to play instead. And to everyone's surprise at the time, Ding actually won before he was beaten by Gukesh in 2024. Magnus just didn't see any point in playing a format which he thinks takes too much time and effort to prep for, while also proving very little of his overall chess skills. So he saw no need to play along with FIDE's WCC format anymore and just left the title. And people outside of chess might think that this is such a dramatic and maybe over-romanticized way of viewing a guy who might have been just running away from the title fight itself and had been childish in the face of their sport's governing body. But in comparison to other chess greatest of all-time candidates, this is about on par for their behavior against FIDE. Bobby Fischer kinda went insane after being used as a pawn by the US government in the 70s to fight the Soviets who ruled chess during the Cold War, also left his title and disappeared from pro chess entirely when he got into a disagreement with FIDE for his 1975 WCC match. He sort of just became a loony afterwards, and the US government even had a warrant out for his arrest at some point later in his life. And then we have Garry Kasparov, who used to be the god of chess before Magnus came into the picture. After also failing to reach an agreement on terms for a world championship match, he decided to say, screw FIDE, and went off to make his own chess organization in 1993 called the BCA, which got him kicked out of FIDE's rankings for a while and made for a weirder period of actually having two separate World Chess Champion titles. But yeah, essentially, Magnus, in the words of Gotham Chess, one of the game's most popular content creators, went around the lines of, "This guy was so good, he got bored and left the World Championship." And the thing,
it's so hard to play against Magnus, man. It's so hard he got bored and left the title.
And the thing about Magnus is that it's very easy to prove that he is still the most dominant player on the planet, even if he's no longer holding the World Classical title. First thing to look at is his #1 ranked classical chess player status. He holds the record for the longest unbroken streak as the world #1 in chess history, going back as far as July 2011, all the way to the present time. He doesn't hold the record for the longest time spent in total as world #1, as that record belongs to Garry Kasparov, but a lot of people have argued that Magnus holding the ranking in the era that he is playing in for as long as he has already been doing have already eclipsed that of Kasparov's tenure. Magnus also holds the record for the highest ELO ever achieved in classical chess, which is 2882 that he reached both in 2014 and in 2019, beating Kasparov's record by 31 points. There was even a period of time where Magnus was so far ahead compared to the rest of the very stacked field that the gap between him and second place was larger than the gap between number 2 with number 28 in the world. And in the 14 years that he held world #1 position, there's only a handful of times where other players come close to taking it off of him. The most significant one only being Fabiano Caruana, who was literal points away from taking it from Magnus but was soundly halted during their World Championship fight in 2018, and no one else since have ever came closer than that. Recently, some players have periodically closed the gap to somewhere under 20 points, but that's mostly due to the fact that ever since Magnus let go of the classical title, he had also been veering away from many tournaments that are purely holding the classical format. So his rating barely ever changed much. And in the times where people begin speculating that others are getting close, such as when Arjun Erigaisi seems to be bulldozing his way to it in late 2024, Magnus just wins a major classical tournament and staves off the pressure without ever letting them get all that close to him. He also holds the record for the longest unbeaten streak in classical chess, where he went 125 classical games not dropping a single one. This was a record that went from July 2018 all the way until October 2020. His classical dominance was obvious for anyone to see. Even Caruana, the person who many, including Magnus, have said to be the best classical player after Magnus in the last decade, could only hope to achieve 12 straight classical draws in their 2018 World Championship match before Caruana got decimated in the rapid tiebreaks 3-0. Now, usually when we are talking about any other great chess players, this is where I go, yeah, this guy was great in classical, but then when we talk about the other two formats in Rapid and Blitz, said player might not be as great. Let's take Fabiano Caruana again. In classical, he is currently ranked 3rd. However, in Rapid and Blitz, he is only 7th and 12th, respectively. Not at all bad by any stretch of the imagination, but again, not something you'd want if you were trying to dominate your entire field. The disparity with Rapid was the thing that ended up costing him his 2018 title challenge anyways. How about the current World Chess Champion Gukesh Domoraju? Well, even in classical chess, he ranks 10th, and he is nowhere near the top 20 in Rapid nor in the top 30 of Blitz, which implies that he is great at theory and long calculations, but kinda sucks in the other respects, especially ones that involve speed, which is a running joke even amongst the chess pros themselves.
I mean, Gukesh.
I think Gukesh will get like 99 calculation.
Arjun probably pretty good on time management.
And Gukesh also very bad at time management.
Or let's take Vincent Keimer, a German 20-year-old, the former world #1 in the juniors category, who's been running rampant in the ratings and have even gone up to 4th in the classical ratings, higher than the current world champ. But just like the world champ as well, he is even further away from the tops of the Rapid and Blitz ratings. Then we also have Hikaru Nakamura, a face that Twitch goers are probably familiar with, is actually 2nd in both classical and current Blitz rating. However, he drops all the way down to 10th when it comes to Rapid. And while there is really only a 34 points difference between him and Ding Liren, who is 2nd in Rapid, 34 points of ELO when you're a 2700 plus rated player, much less one nearing 2800, or rather known in the chess world as a Super GM, is quite a gulf that you can only feel by being one of those players. You gain points like snails trying to climb a fully vertical ladder, yet lose them like a 200-kilogram man sliding down one. For every other top 20 chess players, this is how they are going to be looked at. There will always be a facet of the game that they are not particularly powerful at and would probably remain that way for the rest of their careers. Whether it is due to the notion that they don't find it worth to spend the time excelling in those other time formats when they already have a format that they do excel in, or the notion that those time formats simply do not fit their playstyle at all. Every other player would be judged this way. Every other player would have this sort of weakness in their repertoire. But remember how I said that between Hikaru, who's 10th in the rapid ratings, with Ding Liren, who is 2nd, there is only a 34-point gap? What if I were to tell you that the gap between 2nd and 1st in rapid is almost twice that gap between 10th and 2nd? And what if I told you that the man who holds that gap at 1st is none other than Magnus Carlsen himself? And also, remember that I said that Hikaru was 2nd in Blitz? Pray tell, can you guess who is 1st in Blitz while holding a rating that is 43 points above Hikaru's already monstrous 2838? Actually, it's someone else named... Nope, it's still Magnus. It's Magnus Carlsen again. And mind you, this is not just a one-time occurrence kind of thing. He has held these sorts of ratings for quite a while now, has topped all 3 time formats multiple times, if not for most of his career, only at times losing the #1 spot in the more volatile Blitz format to players like Hikaru, Alireza Firouzja, 2021 World Blitz Champion Maxime Vachier-Lagrave, and former World Champion Ding Liren, before periodically taking it back. And as far as I could research, he's held both the #1 spot in Classical and Rapid for 99% of the last decade, only losing Rapid to Ding Liren for a brief period of time in December of 2023 before reclaiming it, or rather Ding losing it, a month later. And Magnus have since held it until now. No other player has come close to doing anything similar to this. His World Championship wins in those formats just bolster his dominance over all facets of chess even further. On top of his 5 classical titles, he also won 5 World Rapid titles, being the only person to have won more than 2 World Rapid titles, and have won 8 out of the available 12 World Blitz titles, being the only player to have won more than 3 of those, while also being the only player to have won those titles back-to-back. And yes, while he is not the current Classical or Rapid World Champion since he got kicked out for wearing jeans in that particular tournament, look it up, it's pretty funny, he still jointly holds the World Blitz title after sharing it with Nepo in 2024. The very last time Magnus was left without a world title to his name was 2013, before he won his first Classical World title. Even after he left the Classical title in 2021, he has since achieved the Rapid and Blitz double twice in a row in 2022 and 2023, all while still being the only person to have held both World Rapid and Blitz titles at the same time for a total of 4 times no less, adding in 2014 and 2019. While if you take into account the double of holding the Classical title with another world title, then the total would rise up to 6 times, where he held both Classical and Blitz titles in 2017 and 2018. Guy has a total of 18 world titles. Even if you combine the world titles of the entirety of chess's current top 20 players, he would still have 5 more world titles than them. And with FIDE giving the distinction of winning World Rapid and Blitz in tournaments that in the past weren't exactly called World Rapid and Blitz but are now considered by FIDE to have been World Rapid and Blitz, came another achievement that could only serve as a monstrous display of pure consistency and dominance. And that is the Triple Crown, where a player holds the Classical, Rapid, and Blitz World Champion titles all at the same time. There are only 3 players in chess's entire history that have achieved this feat. The first to do so was Susan, or Zuzza, Polgar in 1996. The second to do so, and still to this date, the only man to have done it, is Magnus Carlsen in 2014. And the third person is Zhu Wenjun, who achieved it just last year. However, the only person to have achieved the Triple Crown in not just 2, but 3 different points of their career? That's right, Magnus Carlsen in 2014, 2019, and in 2022. No other player has even come close to even achieving a double crown, let alone a triple crown, let alone doing it 3 times. In something like football, this would be like if a player won a treble 3 different times, which has never been done by any football player in history. And if we were to try to put it in like league terms, then I guess it would sort of be like if you were to hold both MSI and Worlds titles at the same time 3 different times, which also, as we mentioned before, had only been done once. Online chess has also reached a point where it is now considered an esport and even featured in the 2025 Esports World Cup. But even through the advent of computers, the tightening of the field, and the full digitalization of the game of chess itself, there is really only one man's name that kept consistently winning the majors, and that name is Magnus Carlsen. Magnus also plays in a time where 13 other players beside himself have cracked the 2800 classical barrier, which have only happened for 15 players in total for the entirety of chess's history, with many of them doing it in repeated occasions and are either still playing or played against him for an extensive period of time. The competition has never been this cracked for chess's entire history, and even in an event just a couple of weeks ago, he destroyed the world champion 5.5 out of 6, meaning that he won 5 out of 6 games and drew 1, whilst also winning the tournament being 9 points ahead, or technically 3 points ahead because they had a weird rating system, in a field that consists of the world's 3 highest rated players plus the world champion. There was even a hilarious time where he won the tournament but still ended up losing rating points. That's the extent of just how dominant the guy really was and still is. At the end of the day, however, if we want to be fully objective, there really just is no telling how we can definitively determine which one of these players were the more dominant in their respective field. To begin with, they already compete in 2 very different manners, with one being in a team-based game and the others playing solo. It's just that, to me, it takes a different type of metal to dominate the way Magnus has in chess. And Faker, without taking anything away from what he has achieved, also has a glaring blind spot where he did not win anything internationally major for 6 years, which for me puts a damper to his overall dominance in comparison to other types of dominance. And while many would say Worlds is tough to win, game changes, then I can apply the same arguments to Magnus's 18 World Championships. Chess is also an incredibly brutal game. I would even say that it is one of the most mentally brutal games that you can professionally play out there. You can spend 99 moves playing with computer-like accuracy, but with one bad or distracted move, you can end up throwing away your entire advantage if you had any, or even just outright losing the game. In a different time, in another universe, Fabiano Caruana, Hikaru Nakamura, and Jan Nepomniachtchi are all players who could have been multiple world title winners. Yet many times, they couldn't overcome their biggest hurdles, which at times could have been themselves, but in all the other times, it would all be down to Magnus Carlsen himself. Despite being the best classical player after Magnus and holding the 3rd highest ELO ever in chess history, Fabiano is yet to win the Classical World Championship or any World Championship. And despite having been known as one of, and at times, the best Blitz player in the whole world, Hikaru has yet to have won a single World Blitz title. And in the 2 times he came close, it's the same old face that ended up perched at the top step. Players like Molite and especially Faker are dominant. Magnus is inevitable. All of them are monsters, ones that we probably won't see in decades if they were to finally call it a day from their respective masteries. In League, dominance can be overwhelming power, while in chess, dominance can just be winning by the skin of their teeth, but doing so 1,000 times over. One just fits my bill of dominance a tad bit better than the other, but it goes without saying that they both exemplify ruthless dominance without compromise. The pinnacle of their masteries, and none of their contemporaries can even hope to come close. Though if there is one thing that I can confidently give to someone like Faker, then that would definitely be his community-given title. I mean, even in the realms of esports and sports, I highly doubt that you'd find a better nickname than the unkillable Demon King. Chess just doesn't have that kind of cool nicknames. Sure, Magnus has the greatest endgame player of all time moniker, but nah, that doesn't come close. In the end, like I said before, it will be a wholly impossible task to see who is actually more dominant. And that's just in the case of these 3 or these 2, I guess. I've seen other people who were bringing other sports legends into the mix instead of just esports and games, and once we open that can of worm, that'll just be much more of a headache to talk about. From Jordan or LeBron, Tiger Woods, Wayne Gretzky, Messi or Ronaldo, Don Bradman, Roger Rafa, Novak, Verstappen, Hamilton, Schumacher. Yeah, good luck trying to pick someone and name them the definitive domineering athlete. Anyway, this is a long video. I'm tired. Glazing Magnus takes a bit of effort, thanks Gotham Chess, but I like explaining why I think certain things are the way they are. And in a time where we are seeing so many other competitive dominations coming to an end, I'd be happy to shed some light on the one that is hopefully still going to go somewhat strong for a little while longer. Until the next video, the name's Sleepy, and I'll see y'all next time. Sayonara.